Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Sage's webinar all about bringing together the greatest apps in the ecosystem to help you save time, be a little bit more profitable, and add more client value. I'm just going to sort of give ourselves a couple of seconds to allow a few more people to join us. But for those who don't know me, my name's Chris Downing, and I'm the Director for Accounting and Bookkeepers here at Sage. I've been at Sage just over 5 years, but prior to that, I was an accountant by trade for nearly 20 years. And I really appreciate the challenges which we all face every day, increasing client demands, more regulations, more deadlines, but also as the fact in the background, we're trying to grow our practices, employ staff, retain the talent that we've got, but also we're battling those time camp bandits, everyone from HMRC in terms of trying to get information from them. And during the summer with telephone helplines down, we're thinking about the future, whether that's MTD and its various ramifications, or just trying to think about how do we actually be a better accounting firm or bookkeeping business, trying to add more value, thinking about the digitization of our practice, or actually finding the tools that actually add more client value. Or it's actually sometimes just taking some time out for yourself. It's August, so I'm really grateful for you to actually spare the time today, this afternoon, to hear from us. But again, it's thinking about the time and your own personal development and thinking about how that personal well-being and having the time available to think about your practice going forward. So I think we're getting there in terms of numbers for this webinar. So what's the purpose of today's session? Now, I speak to an awful lot of accountants and bookkeepers day in, day out. And we really appreciate that your three key challenges or three opportunities and desires are to be more profitable, have the cash available in terms of doing what you want to do. If you're employing people or you as individuals, being as efficient as possible, and always trying to drive and deliver as much client value. But also with that in mind, we recognize that actually an awful lot of people may have not have come across apps and solutions and tools which can actually add real value and actually solve some of these major problems and challenges out there. So Sage, over the last couple of years, we've tried to ensure that we bring more than just bookkeeping and payroll tools to you, but tools that enable you to be more efficient, enable you to actually drive more value, be priced consistently, but also when it comes to client information, client advisory, having those tools available. So today I'm really welcoming the fact that we have three experts, three founders of these fields, three people who have been working with accountants and bookkeepers for well over 10 years in their various scenarios and solutions. So we've got Dawson from Futrli, James Ashford from GoProposal, and Brian Carolan from AutoEntry. Now, I think the purpose of today's webinar is to basically provide some information, the stories around these solutions, but also explaining how these tools really add huge value and change how accounting firms operate. But also it's the fact that when these tools are used together, maybe not all on day one, but as part of a larger and more structured plan, this will really put and give you the ability to drive your businesses forward, your practices forward, and add real client advice and guidance and value. So I would like to start off with you, Brian. Now, Brian, you've been with AutoEntry for well over 10 years now. And I think it's a case of the fact that you've been working with accounting firms and bookkeeping businesses, and you've been seeing how tools, when combined together, add real value. So when you think about what we're going to be doing today and looking at the opportunities of apps working together, in your view, what sort of the opportunities of apps being used properly within an accounting firm to actually change how they're going to be operating going forward?
Thanks a lot, Chris. Hi, everyone. A slight correction there. With AutoEntry, a little less than 10 years. AutoEntry isn't actually 10 years old yet. So, but yeah, there's huge opportunities, and I think groups like ourselves with the brands that we have within Sage, being able to bring those three apps together. And I think it's just managing the apps that you have and kind of making sure that the apps that you have within your practice, whether accountancy or bookkeeping or whatever the practice may be, just making sure that those apps actually can talk together, that they're all pointed in the right direction, that they're all, you have an end goal and a target on what you want all those apps to achieve. And it's the opportunity that's there is when you realize what those apps are that you need, that they all work together, that they're all heading towards one goal, making your practice an awful lot more efficient, that you can serve your customers in a much more efficient way, in a much more productive way as well. And obviously, of course, that whatever apps that you choose, whether it's the three of us, of course, we'd all love that to be us, that they are automating that process as much as possible. So you can be much more hands-on with your client and a little less hands-off on the kind of, not the drudgery, but the certainly the data element and the more mundane tasks within the practice.
So before I come to James, I'll also touch with you, Hannah, the most recent team member of the Sage family. Now, I would say that business reporting, data insights, explaining the future of how a business can operate, these are basically sort of meeting the goals of, let's say, what an accountancy firm would like to drive with their clients. But also the fact that you've been working with so many accountancy firms, and sometimes maybe business reporting or financial insights is probably put to one side in terms of the apps and the tools they may want to use. So when you think about the opportunity we've got at the moment of bringing these tools together, where do you see that maybe the next 18 months, 2 years, in terms of how accountancy firms will suddenly realize the benefits of actually seeking and using the tools available?
Sure. Well, I guess as a non-accountant, I'm the interloper here. I actually come from the business owner's perspective. So my background was hospitality before I went into this. And obviously have had a relationship with an accountant for a very, very long time, multiple. And I think one of the biggest cruxes, the reason why Futrli exists is because I nearly lost my pub because I didn't forecast VAT properly. Terrible moment, very, very stressful, had a 1-year-old in tow at the time. And I think it's actually coming back to the human values of all of this. You know, you go into accountancy to provide accountancy services, and much of that, of course, is compliance, which is kind of looking back at the very accurate historical elements of things. With Futrli, what we wanted to do was give you an opportunity to be able to look at the past, present, and future of a business. If you can do that, you can hook the business owner. They have dreams, they've not set up, you know, they've set the business up to provide a life for them and their family. That's the crux. That's why they've done it. So how do we best get them there as an accountant? How do we get them there with the fewest bumps in the road? How do we manage all of those processes with them? How do we give, let them scale their opportunities? If we can hook that piece of the puzzle, if we can really get, develop relationships with our clients, which again, going back to Brian's points, where we've got automation so that lots of the heavy lifting is being done, the software is effectively doing the heavy lifting for you, so that when you're sat in that meeting, could well be a compliance meeting as the hook to go, well, where do you want to be? What do you want to do the next 3 months? What do you want to do the next year? What's your 5-year plan? It's that, great. Well, I'm here to help you get there. And we do that with setting targets, budgets, forecasts. We report on what we've done over the last month, 3 months. It can be such a seamless setup. It can be such a seamless workflow for an accountant with their client, and can also provide huge income opportunities for the accountancy firm.
So now I think we've got everyone on the line. This is going to be an interactive session, so everyone should hopefully understand how to use Zoom. So if you've got any questions which you want to ask any of the panelists today, please do so, put them in the Q&A, and I will be reviewing them throughout the session. If it's appropriate, I'll drop it in. If not, we'll answer them all towards the end. Now, James, we've touched on the subject matter in terms of apps adding value, the fact that there's so many opportunities in terms of services which accounting firms can offer. But also, I think sometimes accounting firms probably do not think about the opportunities in terms of how they can actually transfer that value of the solution they've got with their clients. So when you think about the solutions we've got today, everything from being more efficient, thinking about how you can price your services, as well as those things around the reporting as well, not forgetting the bookkeeping, the compliance, which accountants are doing day in, day out. How important do you think it is actually for accountants to be thinking about their app ecosystem, the solutions they've got, and also the opportunity which this will bring with the firms over the next couple of years or so?
Yeah, I'm going to be maybe a little bit challenging to what some people have said so far, and I'll come back to them. But like the phrase automation, kind of just to my mind, what we shouldn't be the goal isn't automation. The primary goal isn't automation. And in the firms that I've worked in, so the first firm that I worked in with was my accountancy place, what we wanted to do was to create the most impact we could with our clients, to create the most positive experience as we possibly could. And I actually think there's a danger, sorry to kind of counter some of this, but I actually think there's a danger of starting with software as the goal. So if you start with software as the goal and start with automation as the goal, sometimes you can try and shoehorn things together, but the underlying process is flawed in the first place. So I always think before you get into the software, Chris, it's important to take a step back. And my preference is big white wall, post-it notes, get your team involved, and actually think, what is the experience we're trying to create here? What is the very best experience we want? What's the greatest impact that we can have with our clients? And when we've done this in our firm, sometimes, again, just to be a little bit contrary, there are steps where you can't automate it, where there's actually needs to be a manual step, but it actually creates a better overall experience. So at that point, you've got a challenge, which is, do I want to achieve the experience I want, or do I want to perhaps drop it down a level and have it fully automated? But to my mind, the whole reason why we systemize, the highest level of systemization, is to create incredible experiences for our clients, because experiences change the way our clients feel. And at the end of the day, your clients will remember how you made them feel long after they've forgotten what you've done for them. So that is my starting point, is what is the experience I want for my clients and for my team.
Great.
I don't think I answered your question there.
No, that's right. We'll feed it in throughout. Sorry, Hannah.
No, I was just going to say, I couldn't agree more. I think often you don't see accounting firms putting the lens back on themselves to go, well, what does our business look like? You know, you're there, if you're there sitting advising your business clients, well, you know, you've got to eat your own dog food and do that back with yourself. And then that is the opportunity. So I love the idea of sitting around with your team and getting the post-it notes out and making it a really, really inclusive experience within the firm to take the experience outside.
And quite rightly, accounting firms, bookkeeping businesses, they are businesses in their own right. And with any business, it's about the income you generate, reviewing, looking after, critiquing, making best use of the costs or the expenditure you've got and the tools you have. But when it comes to the income side, I think this is where, James, you've had probably the greatest impact in terms of the profession, in terms of highlighting, in terms of how the value which accountants can convey is so important, and also recognizing the fact that pricing is a challenge, it's the inconsistency that arises. And I think this part of this webinar is actually for those who have never come across GoProposal, never seen AutoEntry, or not seen the benefits which Futrli brings. It's a little bit of the backstory around why you built these tools and the value that they're bringing to accountancy firms. So, James, if you'll go back a couple of years, it's like, what are the key challenges when you were working with accountants that GoProposal was solving? And also, how have these developed over the last couple of years, and what's the opportunity in the future of GoProposal as well?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of questions there, Chris. So I'll do my very best.
Start with the starter. Why did it all start?
It's fine, but you're absolutely right. Primarily, you run an accounting business or a bookkeeping business, not a bookkeeping firm or a practice. And the primary function of a business is to make money. Now, you can say, no, it's not. It's my reason why. I want to do good. I want to this. Beautiful. But if you don't make money, you'll never fulfill your reason why. The primary function of the business has to make money. And that's the core problem for so many firms. And what I see a lot of firms doing is try and solving surface problems and not core problems. So, for example, they may have a surface problem of just can't recruit, just can't get the staff, can't get good staff these days. And it's like, you can if you pay them enough. Like, the root cause of your recruitment issue is the fact that you're not charging enough. And then we get into this mindset of thinking, yeah, but we're in times of economic uncertainty and economic hardship, so I can't increase my fees and all of this type of stuff. So we really have to kind of address our mindset in this as well, Chris, and look at what is actually preventing us from charging more. Because if you don't charge enough in the first place, you ultimately, you can't deliver the level of service that your clients will be happy to pay for, right? And the other big thing in this as well that Hannah was talking about earlier is, you've got to connect your services to the value that your clients want. Like, I don't want bookkeeping as a business owner. I don't want bookkeeping services. I don't want accounting services. I want the benefits that gives me. I want to be able to take my kids to Lapland this year. I want my wife not to have to work if she doesn't want to. I want us to be able to move closer to the kids' school and be to take my kids to and from school every day. And if you're not having that level of conversation with your clients, and you're focusing on the service or the software, you're never going to unlock all of that value for them.
So that's because I'm reading what that showcased the fact that as accounting bookkeeping firms, when we're looking at our business model, even if you're starting off as a sole practitioner employing no staff, it's so important to be thinking about actually where may you be in 6 months, 12 months time, 18 months time. It's all very well thinking about the income you've got, but also it's like actually pricing for the future as well.
Absolutely, Chris. I spoke to a group of accountants in Australia, bookkeepers in Australia this morning, and what they were saying was they were getting, let's say, $40 an hour working for someone else. They've now set up on their own and they're getting $80 an hour. So they're like, brilliant, life's great. I'm getting double what I was getting paid before. But actually, you've not actually charged enough to ever be able to recruit anybody, right? Or to do marketing or to do so all you've got is a higher paid job. You haven't actually got a business. And so a really great exercise to do is to create the organizational chart for your business in the future. So what does your business look like when you're getting what you want from it? And I don't know what that is. It might be I want to earn 5K a month and I want to work 3 days a week and I only want to focus on marketing my business. Like whatever it is that you want to do, you have to start with you first and foremost, figure out what it is that you want. And once you've got that, what is the revenue I need to generate and what is the team I'm going to need to generate that revenue? Map out your organizational chart. And there's a really quick, really simple tip to do this, Chris. I don't know if anyone's used ChatGPT. Go and use ChatGPT, but don't use it like Google. Use it like really interrogate it. So you can, so let's say, for example, you figure out you want a £500,000 revenue accounting firm. Ask ChatGPT, create me the most efficient organizational chart for a £500,000 revenue, cloud-based accountancy firm based in the north of England, based on Will Farnell's pod structure, as outlined in the Human Firm. Like you can ask it that level of question and it will produce you your org chart. And then you need to work back from there. But exactly to your point, Chris, we need that vision of the future first.
Yeah. Can I just add that step, you then absolutely take it forward into creating a forecast for what that looks like. So what would the costs be? You work it through. You go, and there's my 500, and those are all the staff, and you do it bottom up. Massive fan of doing bottom up forecasting. Put your cost in first, and then it'll tell you what sales you need to make to be able to cover that. But it just goes hand in hand, and then you're in the confident place to talk to your customers.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people do that, Hannah. I don't think enough firms. I'd be interesting to see how many firms have monthly management accounts, how many firms do a management report, how many firms have a budget and a forecast. And the answer is very few. And if you can't do it for yourself,
it blows my mind.
If you can't do, be your own client. If you take one thing from this, be your own client and be the best client you can be in terms of getting all the services from yourself.
Yeah, and I remember being practiced myself. We had numbers coming out our ears in terms of understanding the utilization of the business, recoverability on jobs, but it's all about knowing the numbers of your own practice. And now me working in Sage and observer of the market, I've certainly seen how those firms who are adopting GoProposal, and I would say it's not just using the tool in terms of how to price your services and elevate maybe the value which you convey, it's also the change in thinking. Like James, as you said, the use of ChatGPT, thinking about the organizational chart. I think this is some part of the value which GoProposal brings and part of the community. It's not just the physical tool which enables you to actually price your services. No, it's the thinking behind it, which I think is just as valuable.
100%. And if someone says to me, okay, let's try GoProposal and we'll see if it works, my answer is no, don't. If that's your thinking, don't try it. When you get to the point of let's use GoProposal and make it work, that's the point to sign up with it. And so I'm just going to bring out one of my books, sorry. But I would start with Selling to Serve or Untapped, and it will really challenge your mindset. And we can send copies of the audio version out of these books, guys, if anybody wants them to go through that, because you've got to get your mindset right first. And when you have that mindset, from all of my research and all of my close working with firms, bearing in mind I work with armies of one right up to kind of top 30 firms, I believe that the majority of firms have anywhere between 20 to 40% of revenue growth from their existing client base, right? We had someone sign up for GoProposal 3 weeks ago. So they were in their free trial period, Chris. They had not got their credit card out of the pocket. They were still in the free trial period. And during that period, we helped them to go and reprice their existing clients, right? This lady posted in the GoProposal community that she has more than covered the cost of GoProposal and she's still in the free trial period. So I messaged her and I said, that's incredible. Would you just mind telling me like what we're talking here in terms of revenue growth? She said in the last 3 weeks, I've increased my revenue using GoProposal by £17,000. It's
Wow.
more than covered, and I'm still in the free trial period. That's what we do. Like, we want to have the greatest impact we can with our clients.
Now, Hannah, we can probably see the fact that GoProposal is a fantastic tool, that realization factor in terms of how you can have a conversation with the client, demonstrate the value, ensure you price consistently as a practice. But we are still seeing an awful lot of firms under pressure, especially their staff, to actually generate more revenue, especially when the fact that we recognize that some accountancy firms are delivering more services, and we call that business advisory. But it's a case of, when you think about, I do believe business advisory, talking about the business itself, the opportunities, their goals, that's a huge untapped opportunity. So what other ways could an accountancy firm be thinking about those additional services? Because why win new clients? Why don't you actually work with the clients you've already got and charge them more?
It does go back to process. You know, you have to give your staff, you have to empower your staff to be able to do it. You know, if they're on timesheets and all they've got are blocks of time to do compliance work, it's never going to happen. So that fundamental, you know, change has to happen within the business. And please do it, because the impact that you'll have, you know, economically with the clients, you know, in a much bigger scale, you know, your local communities, if your businesses are stronger, etc., is huge. But these compliance meetings, you know, I'm a massive fan of using them. Use them. How many meetings have you got next week with a client? Sat down in front of them, that it's going through a tax return or, you know, something along those lines. Use that as an opportunity to just start the conversation, right? Where do you want to be? Going back to it, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? They'll be like, oh God, you've not asked this before. How's the family? What are you worried about? What's keeping you up at night? That's where you start. And through just really simple, intelligent questioning, you are moving in a direction then to hook and go, right, I can help you with that. How I'm going to help you with that is we're going to set out a plan. And a plan is a forecast or a budget. That's it. It's just, that's the mechanism with it. But then how do you retain the value? Well, I'm going to hold you accountable. It's that simple. Advisory doesn't need to be any more, you know, obtuse than that. It really doesn't. It's just help. That's all it is. I wish that we could bin the word advisory, actually, which is terrible because it's all over our website. But but I think it's been blown into something that people, I don't know what it is. It's like a big, you know, the elephant in the room. What is it? You know, it can be just that simple. And then in a month, you've got a retainer package that covers the cost and more of the work that you're going to have to do. Using something like Futrli, you'll set up, I don't know, 3 core KPIs for a business, operational KPIs. Go back to my hospitality days, you know, time and time again with this. If I had then, back in the day, 20 years ago, a dashboard that showed me my real-time food and drink gross profit and my wage percentage, those are the 3 things as an operator that I can control. If I control those things, very, very high chance that I'm going to have money in the bank at the end of the year and be able to take the kids to Lapland, as James put it. But it's about doing that, and then, you know, using your accountant, you know, nous intellect to understand other things within the numbers that they might not. To go, hold on a second, there's something happening here. We might be able to pay that down faster. We could release cash there. It's about this piece of the puzzle. And genuinely, if you can hook your clients on that forward-thinking view of their life and help them with it, they will pay. They'll pay. It's so valuable because it might get them to retirement faster. You know, it's, you know, whatever those things are. So, but it comes back to, if you don't give your staff the time in their week to do it, or to make sure that you know, maybe they're incentivized by, you know, average revenue per client. If I'm incentivized by average revenue per client, I'm going to use the word, you know, do you bonus them? I don't know. Is there conflict of interest? So we have these debates about this. And there's always a way. There's always a way to financially remunerate your staff. But, you know, if you set targets across your entire staff base and you're assessing them monthly for the average revenue per client within their portfolio, that's going to start to change mindset as well. So there's going to be higher value conversations that will then occur. Agree?
Yeah, totally agree. And therefore, the key thing there is having the right conversations with your clients at the right time. but a conversation consumes time, doesn't it? And I think as accounting firms and bookkeepers, time is the most finite resource. So how can you be more efficient and more effective? Now, Brian, I think you're the gatekeeper to actually releasing time within a practice. So what are the main areas which AutoEntry has been used in terms of actually releasing that time, making accounts and bookkeepers more effective, and also enabling them to scale up their practice and maybe work with more clients?
Yeah, well, of course, AutoEntry is the very first step, I suppose, in any accounting or bookkeeping firm. It's physically getting that piece of paper, that invoice, that receipt that your client produces, and getting that into your accounting package, which will lead on to your being able to do your future forecasts. And you can't even have a proposal with a client without a piece of data that you need to actually work on. But the biggest thing is AutoEntry will enable you to, you're effectively buying time where you were, and we used to do it, certainly when we were at the Sage Roadshows over the years, we'd always ask the question, whoever grew up, or when they were younger, who wanted to grow up to be a bookkeeper or dreamt of data entry when they were younger. No one ever put their hand up, and until it was actually about a couple of years before COVID, I was up in Belfast, and an old couple at the back said, yeah, we do. Myself and the wife, we sit down every Saturday and we data entry. I was like, yeah, but would you mind leaving? Because everyone else just wants to have a good time. However, that's what AutoEntry does. So, and we kind of like, I even refer back to it as the likes of when supermarkets first came along, where traditionally you had the old shop, the shopkeeper was behind the counter, and you'd walk in and ask for a can of beans, and you'd ask for a newspaper, and the shopkeeper would go get everything. Whereas these days you walk into a shop and the customer does their own picking. They grab their own products and they put it in a basket and they bring it to the counter. And an awful lot of supermarkets, even now, you scan your own stuff and pay for it and you walk out the door. So AutoEntry is kind of doing that with your data entry, where an accountant or bookkeeper, you can give your client the AutoEntry app and they have an invoice or they have a receipt. And as soon as they get it, they get a delivery at the shop. Hannah gets a delivery in the pub off the kegs of beer, whatever, and they have the invoice there, and then snap an image, click upload, phone goes in the pocket, invoice goes in the filing cabinet, and you continue working. And the idea is then the AutoEntry will now take that, we'll extract it, we'll categorize it, we'll pop it in the accounts package for you. So the client technically really isn't doing much. Accountant bookkeeper certainly isn't doing anything, but you now have all that information within the accounts package. And what we're always trying to propose, I suppose, is that you nearly have now a live flow of data. You're already connected to your bank. You're using a bank feed to feed bank details in. We're now using the likes of the AutoEntry app to feed all the paperwork in. And you can now see when you open up SPCA, or your accounts package, you can now see how the client's doing today, or certainly up to yesterday. Whereas previously, we're trying to get out of that traditional huge amount of data entry work at month end or quarter end or year end, big spike, and then you're down doing nothing for the rest of the month, and a big spike at the end of the month. So the actual practice is extremely busy, month end, quarter end, etc. But if we can remove that by having a much more even flow of data in, and when, as Hannah was saying, when you sit down with your client, you can open up the accounts package and see how you're doing today, or certainly live within the last 24 hours. And we're trying to get rid of that kind of traditional, hey, let's see how you did last month. Let's see how you did last year. There's no point looking at last month when we're already 3 weeks into this month. How am I doing today? So you can make those decisions. Those decisions now become much more informed. You can see what's going on. You can see how the client's doing. And as Hannah said and James said, it opens up the opportunity to have those conversations about where you're going to go next. We're removing those hours of data entry kind of simple task. As much as James helps this, we'll automate it for you. Thank you, James. But you're basically buying the time to give you that time to have with the client.
And then what we then have with Futrli, of course, is then we suck the information out of the accounting ledger and give you a 3-year forecast to give you a starting point. Forecasting is very time consuming. We've done that work for you with our prediction, software.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue on the fact that where Futrli really adds the value is by having timely information. And sometimes as an accountant or bookkeeper, having access to the information and having confidence and trust in the completeness of the data is always a challenge. Now, I think while we're talking about AutoEntry and Futrli, I think it's worthwhile actually calling out the fact that we recognize that accounting practices, they'll be using a whole multitude of bookkeeping solutions, because when you consider you have the excitement of winning a brand new client, they're already using a bookkeeping tool, but it may not be your preferred bookkeeping tool, but you still want to work with them. You don't want to go changing them. But I think, so Brian from AutoEntry, how many bookkeeping tools does AutoEntry actually work with? And it's not just about the tools, it's still able to actually export data out to Excel if you want to work in that way, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll go with all of them. We have 13 integrations at the minute.
Okay.
Obviously the main ones, Sage 50s, Sage Cloud, SBCA, Xero, QuickBooks Online and Desktop. And then a lot of the smaller packages, certainly in the UK and Ireland, we've all the main packages covered, because of course long before Sage acquired us a couple of years ago, we had to have all those integrations, so we had to be able to work with everyone. But it also means that, certainly from AutoEntry's point of view, you don't have to be locked into one kind of set of packages, whether it's AutoEntry or competitor of us, or indeed a Sage product or competitor of. You can chop and change whichever client you're using, whichever software with. We can still operate with them.
Now, Hannah, in terms of Futrli, you probably first integrated with Xero. So what are you integrated with at the moment in terms of actually taking the data, producing the information and the forecasts? And what are your aspirations as well for the future?
Yeah, so Xero, QuickBooks Online, SBCA, Sage 50s coming down the pipeline, but also non-financial drivers as well. Yeah. So financial, non-financial drivers, things that just don't appear within your accounting ledger, within a business. Very often the operator is working within that realm of data set. And so being able to create a forecast based upon headcount or covers, you know, that you've had at a lunchtime service, or how many hats you've sold, or, you know, whatever those things are, you need to be able to use those drivers as well, so that we have that as part of it. But, you know, to your point, being, you know, accounting package agnostic is of course the dream and where we're moving to be.
Now, James, we could see the value that we get from having accurate, timely data. We see that Brian with AutoEntry is able to help the accounting firm improve the internal processes, streamline them, and have a systemized approach, but also maybe visibility of how long it may take to do data processing or bookkeeping. So with a greater confidence in how long it takes to do a job, how are we seeing this evolving in terms of how accounting firms may be pricing for their services? Because I think traditionally, once upon a time, accountants were probably cagey and nervous about being involved with the bookkeeping side because it could be an open-ended process. But hopefully, I think we can have consistency in terms of how we're doing that process. And so how has that been involved in GoProposal?
Yeah, so I was, again, back to this webinar this morning, I was still surprised that people were charging based on time, especially for bookkeeping. It really surprised me, because if you do that, there is no incentive for you as the bookkeeper or as the practice to improve your efficiencies, to invest in better technology, you know, to attend a webinar like this, to figure out that you want to use AutoEntry in Futrli, and then to go back and learn that and implement it and train your team in that requires effort. So for then you to now be operating more efficiently, you now got to charge less to the client. That just makes no sense. Like, you've done all of that effort. So we need other ways of pricing. So especially for something like bookkeeping, we'd be pricing based on transactions. So within GoProposal, we kind of have the best practice of how firms charge. We can't tell people what to charge. And what we find is that most firms are profitable, they're just not consistently profitable. So if you put that data into the system, GoProposal will build out the pricing for you. And the other thing just to note is that time isn't valued by your clients, okay? So if it was, let's say I got to my month end and I wanted my monthly management accounts, if I value time, the longer it took, the more I would want to pay for it, okay? So if it took you 3 weeks to do it, therefore I should pay you, but it doesn't. I want it fast. I want it within a day of month end or 2 days of month end, certainly within that first week. So the faster you can do something, the shorter the amount of time you can do something, the more valuable it is to me, because you're giving me more accurate data. And so, you know, we talked about this in Will Farnell's book, but this idea of, you know, weekly bookkeeping, weekly reconciliation. At the worst edge, ideally we want daily bookkeeping. We need that data in the system. So you have to use systems like AutoEntry to get the data into the system in the first place. So something like Futrli can then interpret it and give you the information that you need. And back to, Hannah's story earlier, and the reason why I'm so passionate about this is that I've had a business in the past that failed. And it failed not because we made any majorly wrong decision. I just made lots of small ones. And every one of them took us 1 degree off course. And by the time I took my blindfold off, I was on the edge of a cliff and couldn't get back out of it. And so we need that data in the system to be able to get it as fast as possible. I think I've deviated from your question there, though, Chris. Just have I answered it about pricing? It
is, but also what I will provide some observation is the fact that the accountants I speak to, those who have not only adopted GoProposal, but seen the light in terms of maybe transactional billing and having that information has enabled them to be more profitable.
Yeah.
And when you think about effort-based billing, it's not about time, it's the effort you apply to your client. I think transactional billing is really transparent, isn't it? And that's what people want these days, transparency of the services being provided.
It's transparent and it's logical as well, Chris.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's important is because if you want to make this work, you've got to empower your entire team to do it. Like if you go to a restaurant for a meal, and you ask for, the price for a meal, they're not having to go and disturb the head chef, the busiest person in the building, to figure out what the price is. Yeah, that's how most accountancy firms work, because they don't have a clear menu of services. So they have to go and kind of figure out the price every time. Where you go to a restaurant, you know exactly how it works. Everyone in that building is able to sell you a complicated meal, and there's no drama. No one's kicking off going, £30 for a fillet steak. I'm not paying for that. Oh, have the burger then. Like, I don't care. Like, it's just, there's no emotion in it. The menu takes the emotion and empowers everybody. And that's exactly what GoProposal does. One of the principles of GoProposal when we started it was that the most junior member of the team should be able to price the most complicated client. If you can't do that, you have problems, because what will happen, Chris, is a member of your team will be asked to do something. It might be a small thing. Chris, I've got a mortgage application. I've got to get it in this afternoon. I need this information from you straight away. Can you please just help me out with this? Or I'm in the showroom. Should I be buying this electric car or not? I just need this data from you. And because you, as a junior member of staff, think, well, it's going to take me ages to price it. Do you know what? I might as well just do it for the client. You've now done it for the client. You've not been charged for it. You've not got a compliant engagement letter for it. If anything was to go wrong with that information that you've just provided, you are on the hook with it. And so you create this huge raft of problems. And that's why we have to have this logical, transparent, empowering system.
James, on that then, taking that a step further, for a junior member of staff to be able to do that, they have to be able to understand the services that are being provided. And often they're kept back from the more interesting work because they're given, the more, not menial, but you know what I mean, those sorts of tasks within the firm. Would that be fair?
Absolutely, yeah. And the more that I'm always surprised that accountancy firms don't share their own financial information with their team. And when I asked them, why don't you do that? Well, if my staff know how much money we're making, they'll want a pay rise and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, no, it don't work like that. Like, if you share your financial information and what your projections are and what your key metrics are, and you've got your team actively helping you to drive towards those key metrics, then what you're doing is you're creating this idea of entrepreneurship. And the reason why your clients love working with you as the business owner is because you're the entrepreneur. You are more aligned with their thinking, but that's only because you've not empowered your team to do the same. But the moment you bring that entrepreneurship into your team and allow them to drive the growth of your business, they all of a sudden become far more valuable for your clients as well, because they're able to say, look, this is what we do in our firm. Yeah. So it's really important to have that transparency.
Back to eating your own dog food. It's the same. Yeah.
So
can't find your clients if you're not doing it yourself.
So I think everyone watching this webinar will recognize that we probably nailed that efficiency element. We know that we can get data into the practice, no matter what source it may be, get it into a bookkeeping tool, which then enables to do something with information. Obviously the year-end compliance, but when it comes to pretty pictures, amount of information, forecasting, it's there. But also it's the pricing and the proposals, because I remember when back in practice, you get all excited about having that prospect call, that meeting with the client. You get back to the office and then the telephone rings for some other matter. You never get that email out in terms of, thanks for meeting you. This is what I engaged to charge you. But GoProposal enables you to get those communications out, but also you don't have to take responsibility. Someone else in your firm can do so. So efficiency can be nailed with AutoEntry, GoProposal, as well as Futrli.
Sorry, Chris. Sorry, can I say the importance of what you just said there? It doesn't matter what you say to a customer about what you're going to do. We're going to save you time. We're digital cloud experts. Your clients will not hear what you said. What they will do is they will base it on their experience of you. Mm-hmm. So if you've sat with a client and you've told them all this, and then it takes you 3 days to get them a proposal, you've just wasted 3 days and you're not a digital cloud expert. If you're not producing that proposal during the meeting, you are not a digital cloud expert, fact. And so if you want to demonstrate that expertise to the client, you do that through the experience you provide them, not through what you tell them.
At the end of the day, we want to deliver that almost Amazon experience, the ability to actually have those services available and have the delight of having that delivery the very next day. And there should be no difference in terms of how, as accountants, we can provide not just the services, but when a client wants a different service, what the price is going to be.
We all know how impatient we are.
Yeah.
You want a film, you don't have to go to a video shop now or a DVD shop. You go on Netflix, and if it's not there instantly, you're getting annoyed with it. Like what? And then you get onto it and you're like, skip intro. Of course I'm going to skip intro. I'm not going to waste 30 seconds of my life watching an intro. Like, we're all super impatient. And why do you then think that your client isn't going to operate the same way as you? Because they absolutely are. We're all massively impatient. They need it now.
So everyone on the webinar should see a little poll pop up. So they'll be in the background. So it's a case of, you've been hearing about Hannah, you're hearing about James and Brian in terms of what AutoEntry, GoProposal and Futrli deliver. So give just tick in terms of what's interesting you at the moment. So we've got those interest areas which people will be answering the poll in the next couple of minutes. But from Hannah, from the conversations you've been having with accountants and bookkeepers, everything from the sole practitioner to those really large firms, what were the challenges and what was all the gaps missing in terms of maybe the services and discussions, and more importantly, maybe the relationships they were seeking with their clients, and how has Futrli?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of it, but just to bring it all back, there's a lot in the soft skills side of it. It's about talking. If you don't talk to them to begin with and treat them like a human, I mean, James has got actually a great story about how much more money you paid to your accounting firm back in the day, you know, when you started out, after they just sat you down and said, right, where do you want to be? And you don't mind paying, tens of thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds over, years, if you're getting the benefit from it, as a client. So it has to start with the soft skills. You have to empower your team to be able to have a absolutely human conversation with your client about where they want to be. And then the software should just be in the background helping you. You're the primary contact. You're the one with the expertise. You're the one who did the training. You're the one who understands the numbers. Don't underestimate the fact that many of your clients might not necessarily have as much nous around the numbers as you do. Don't bamboozle them with accounting speak. Talk to them like you would talk to your mate in the pub if they said, this is what I would like to do with my business. But it's then the consistency piece. It's building the consistency in with, within the entire, staff quotient of your firm, to ensure that they are confident to be able to have the repeat meeting with them in a month's time to hold your team, your client accountable. That's where the fees come in, the repeat fees, and through the advisory journey that you're going to go on, where your client may well say, I want to retire five years sooner. On that journey, there are going to be other things that happen where they're going to be one-off jobs for advisory, or we need to go for funding, or we need to go there's a loan application, or there's whatever. But you're going to help them uncover what those things are. If you don't have the conversation to begin with, you're just going to be doing that compliance billing. The profit's never going to increase. You're going to be making the same level of profit for your firm over and over and over again, because there's not that opportunity for it to grow.
And you're going to be compared to everyone else as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Because when you think about where most firms are, year-end accounts preparation, tax compliance, that's the bread and butter.
But it's so boring for the client. I mean, honestly, we pay to keep us out of jail. It's like, oh God, right, yes. And then one thing that I always say in these webinars, which makes me very boring, but I'm going to say it again, do not underestimate in that end of year meeting, when your client is given the year-end accounts to sign, they haven't prepared it. but they're the ones who have to sign for it, and it will look totally different because it's gone through tax preparation software than their bookkeeping software. Like the business just looks different, the P&L looks different, it all looks different. So just put yourself in their shoes and go, right, okay, I'm going to talk you through this, but that's last year. We need to focus on this year. Where do we want to be? That's advisory.
Because at the end of the day, business owners, they don't have a problem with accounts preparation. They just want to raise bills, they want to get paid faster, they want to be better organized, and they just want to be on top of their taxes and understand what their tax bill could be and how you could work with them to actually improve that number. But also, I think this is where your tools combined give greater visibility in terms of the services you do offer. Because sometimes, right, Brian, with let's say data processing, business owners don't appreciate the effort to actually get the data put into the right categories and how important it is and the time involved it takes. Now, suddenly, business owners are seeing the visibility, having access to the invoices. They don't have to keep their paper records, so suddenly they're a bit more organized. But what other areas are you seeing AutoEntry adding more value to that client relationship?
Yeah, well, very much we are focused on adding value we're adding to the practice as such. Little bit of client value insofar as transparency on the tasks that you are doing or the tasks that AutoEntry is now doing, but very much the client is going to see more value in the amount of time and the advisory and everything else that you as their accountant bookkeeper can now spend in them. So there's that extra availability, there's those extra services that you can provide when you're not just sitting in a corner entering all that raw basic data. So you can be much more talkative with your client, you have more time, you're not doing a 2-week end of quarter drastic, get everyone's data in kind of 10-hour days all over the place. So while AutoEntry doesn't necessarily add value to the client in a huge way, we're adding value to that relationship that you have with your client.
I would say it adds massive value if you can get operational metrics and understand where your business is going, rather than having to wait. Back in the day with the pub, it was a two-month time lag, really, between me understanding, because it was happening month end would then take the 2 weeks afterwards. So your whole summer season's gone. And if your suppliers put your prices up at the beginning of summer when the school holidays have kicked out, well, you've not made your margin and that profit's gone. You're not getting it back. So it's hugely valuable as long as it's explained in that manner. And that's what it kind of comes back to with the human explanation of the impact of doing these things in a positive way.
So before we start to wrap up this webinar, just sort of high-level results of the poll, what's really interesting, exciting to see is that nearly 50% of the audience would like to have a conversation or get involved with at least AutoEntry, GoProposal or Futrli. And the next important aspect, or just in isolation, is advisory service and forecasting. So on the basis that as accounting firms, we're seeking to do more and be more efficient, but also, James, quite often we have conversations with accountants thinking, my clients will not pay more. They do not see the value. But surely there's got to be a better way in terms of actually getting clients to pay more. And is it because they don't want to pay more, or is it because we've just not shown them what more is?
It rarely has anything to do with money, even if the client says it's something to do with money. It might be. I mean, there's always a chance it might be. But there's a huge correlation between trust and money. So we're having a house done at the moment, and we've got, it's going to sound a bit fancy this, but anyway, we've got a builder and an architect on the project, we've got a garden designer, and we've got an interior designer, okay? So at the start of the project, we agreed a budget for each of those 3 sets of people. As the project's gone on, the garden designer and the builder, their budget has expanded because I've got greater trust in them, where my interior designer, I've lost trust and confidence in her, so I've removed her from the project, and I've said it's because I've lost confidence in you, and we want to make budget cuts back. We need to save some money somewhere, right? So she's left this thinking, well, this has got something to do with money. They can't afford us. They don't want to spend this money. It's got nothing to do with that, right? It's the fact that I've lost confidence in them. So when a client speaks to you and says anything to do with money, I don't see the value in this. This is too expensive. You charge more, etc. What you've got to ask is, where have we not provided the confidence? And I'm going to have to turn to my board here because it's what I used this morning. But it'll be a lack of trust in one of these 4 areas. They either don't have trust in the outcome, you've not given them enough trust in where they're actually going to get to at the end of the day. They don't have enough trust in you because you're too cheap. And we've all experienced this, like something's just too cheap, like, nah, I know I can't get that level of service. It just seems too good to be true. They have a lack of trust in you because you've not given them that confidence. Like maybe you didn't set the agenda for the meeting to start with. Maybe you didn't end that meeting on time. Maybe when they turned up at your office, you weren't prepared for them, or you turned up late to the meeting, or you didn't get your proposal out on time. All of those things build trust prior to them turning up to that meeting. Even before you've given them a service, you're building trust in you all of the time and giving them confidence. The final one, and this is the biggest one, is they have a lack of trust in themselves. They have a lack of trust in themselves to make the right decision because they've made bad decisions before. So they got into the wrong phone contract, they bought the wrong car, they married the wrong sister, whatever, right? They've made mistakes in the past and they don't want to make another mistake with you. So you've got to think, where are we not providing them with trust and confidence? Final question to ask to cut through and see if it is something to do with money. So let's say they say, look, we'd love to go with this, but you're just too expensive. I can get it cheaper elsewhere. Is to say, if I could make this affordable, is there any other reason you wouldn't go ahead? Okay. Now, I'm not going to make it more affordable. I'm not going to knock any money off. I'm using that question to get to the truth. Well, yeah, I just don't really like you, James. I don't want to deal with you every week. I'm sick of you, right? Perfect. Would you be happier dealing with this person instead? Like, I'm just using that question to figure out, is this to do with money, or is there a hidden objection that they've not told me about yet? But even in times of economic uncertainty and all of the headlines in the news about whatever crisis is the next thing, like the nearest shopping centre to us is Meadowhall in Sheffield, right? If I took my camera to there now and drove you around and took you around it, you would see the shops full with people. Everyone would be filled with bags walking out of their shops. No one's told them about a crisis. I promise you, there'd be nice cars in the parking lot and everyone's walking around with an iPhone. So why shouldn't you get some of that money for providing them with the most valuable service that they're going to get, that's going to keep their business alive and keep them getting money?
So what, can I just add one little point to that, is that you would also never, for instance, say, and I can give you a forecast. They're not going to understand what the value that's going to bring. It's about going back to the questioning part. I want to get there. Brilliant. We do this in a plan. This plan is going to have all your numbers in it, and we're going to show you where your peaks and troughs are. And it's about taking it back and translating it into words that make them feel confident. And again, back to James, building trust.
So we're coming to the top of the hour. So we're going to start to slowly wind up this session. And I think we're going to try and do something. So all the hundreds of people on the current webinar, all hold up your phones, and we've got a QR code on the screen, because I think it's really important to recognize is the fact that AutoEntry, GoProposal and Futrli, they are fantastic solutions, but also these solutions should be part of a wider plan for your practice.
It works.
Brilliant. Yeah, the technology works. And I think with a plan is best executed when you're working with someone else or someone to keep you in tune and aligned with that plan. And this is where hopefully Sage is going to sort of fit in being your partner. And when we talk about Sage, Sage is more than just bookkeeping and payroll solutions. It's giving you Sage for accountants, that single list, that client management solution, which enables you to actually manage all your clients in one place. But it's just about managing your clients, as it's actually having access to the technology. Access to the technology like a proposal to enable you to price consistently, ensure you have visibility of the services which you're offering to your client. And we haven't even touched upon AML and risk assessment, some really exciting developments in GoProposal, as well as letter of engagement. Think about having access to getting data within your practice from AutoEntry, then all the exciting things that Futrli delivers. But for those of you who are not aware of it, Sage also offers online compliance tools, the ability to do financial statements, personal tax, self-assessment, corporation tax, all online, all of which is available. So when we think about the services available and the fact that when apps come together, add real great client value, as well as makes your practice more efficient. Brian, from your perspective, not only supporting accountancy firms, How important do you think it is in terms of having that almost overarching story and the ability of maybe Sage to offer services and tools like we talked today all in one place?
Yeah, I think it's super, and it's something that like certainly us as a small business 7-8 years ago when we were really starting out with AutoEntry, we were and kind of still are another tool, another app, another product I have to look at, another product I have to buy, and how do you tie in with this, and do you talk to those guys, and do you work with this, and do you do that? And the concept of, well, do you know what, you can now just go to one company and all the tools are there, and Sage has cherry picked all the best tools, brought them all in together. We're all in under the one umbrella. And certainly for anyone who's nervous about what their app stack might look like, what apps they should go for, what ones talk to each other the best, what ones can give me a full life cycle of how I deal with a client, it will make life an awful lot easier, that you can nearly sit down with one person and they'll describe you through, well, do you know what, even if you don't use this full flow for all of your clients, here's a pre-packaged, nice and easy, simple to understand, quick to install, all the training is there, the free trials and everything else, and you're up and running in 5 minutes. 5 years ago, that would have been absolutely massive, because no one understood where the landscape's going. Whereas these days, everyone has apps. They're probably still, an awful lot of people are probably still not 100% confident on how it all ties in together, but having that one-stop shop as such will make life an awful lot easier.
And I believe it's also having that agnostic approach in terms of the solutions which you do use as a practice, working with any bookkeeping tool as well. Now, Hannah, you're working with accounting firms of all different shapes and sizes, and those who have the clients which have more up-to-date information, they're seeing great value of delivering live financial results forecasting tools, but sometimes they're unable to unlock maybe the benefits of the client base they've got, or actually sometimes not able to actually price appropriately for the services. So from you being with Sage now for what's getting on for 18 months now, what change have you seen to your business Futrli as a service, but also in terms of how accountants are able to actually leverage the value for working with Sage in a larger context?
I think just, you know, the ability for us to scale has been fantastic, which, you know, it's amazing. I think it's the agnostic element of it and what Sage for Accountants is doing. I think Brian used the term one-stop shop. It's, you know, if we can remove the headaches, people having, you know, app fatigue, all of those sorts of things, this is one place to get all of the things that you need in your Sheffield shopping centre. You can do it here. You know, and it's, I would also just say that there's, you know, fantastic customer success teams in the background that can help with all that. We've got humans too, haven't we, Chris, to help, which is a massive thing when you want to take that step.
So before I allow James to, let's say, leave us with a few pearls of wisdom and sort of maybe guide us in terms of what's more important, is it looking at efficiency? Is it looking at the value which you deliver for clients, or actually just making sure we've got the right level of income in our practice? I'm just going to go through a few of the questions which we've got in the Q&A. Now, Hannah, this is probably a combined question between you and me. We've got a question here. Does Sage offer a business valuation module? If not, maybe a plan to, or a timescale of when that may be available. Now, I think business valuation, it's very much a finger in the air sometimes exercise, but actually you cannot value a business unless you understand how that business operates and maybe where it's going. Yeah. So how does Futrli fit into that?
Well, I mean, I think hopefully I've touched on it quite considerably over the last 45 minutes, but, you know, whether it's needing to create historical reports to understand where, you know, activity has been, where profitability has been, where there's been pitfalls and opportunities, you have that. And then if you want to look into the future, you've got that ability too. We have actually been asked for a business valuation module for a while, so you never know. Watch this space.
Now, Brian, I've got a question for you, really. So I've got a bookkeeper concerned about how do maybe the invoices get coded up before they hit the general ledger. And when I talk about general ledger, it's talking about Xero, Sage, QBO, Free Agent, Sage 50, whatever your choice is. but how does the bookkeeper or accountant validate which normal code they're going to sort of hit in AutoEntry? Are there controls in place? Is there automation? Is there machine learning?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, so basically once any document is uploaded, the very first interaction is always with the client or with the bookkeeper accountant. So AutoEntry uses, we've AI machine learning that has been built into the product since day one on how it does the extraction to make sure the accuracy and to verify the data. But once you, the user, whether that's accountant or bookkeeper or client, codes up all of your data the first time, we'll remember that going forward. And you can, I think I saw a question there about the automation as well. You can use AutoEntry very manually in inverted commas, where you review and you categorize everything invoice by invoice or page by page, or as AutoEntry learns your details and learns how you use AutoEntry, you can turn on the automation that it'll go as far as you want, insofar as we can fetch your invoice from Vodafone, code it, post it over to Sage, and essentially all you're doing is clicking refresh in your bookkeeping software and your client's bill from Vodafone has appeared. And that's where we look at kind of, there's a super flow available, and certain utility bills is always the one we'll use as the best example. If you had 50 clients, chances are there's 10 or 20 of them using Vodafone, or they're using EE, or they're using British Gas, or whatever they're using. We can fetch those, code them, and post them automatically every month as those invoices come out, and you never have to touch a British Gas invoice again. So that is all. You can take it that far if you wish, or for those people who are just a little bit more wary or hesitant, you can go individually invoice by invoice if you prefer it that way. So it's entirely down to the user. As you get comfortable with it, you can turn on the extra features as you need them.
Now, Hannah, I think I got a couple of people excited when I mentioned Sage 50 and Futrli. Are we able to disclose any timescales?
It would be punishable by death if I.
But it's on the roadmap. That's the key. Yeah.
However, what I can say is that the Sage 50 team and the data team and our team are working on it. So as soon as we've got timelines, we will let you know. It's not going to be a year. It's going to be within months, but I can't say how many months.
Exciting times. Now, James, let's round off this session. We've been talking about the fact that we are in an incredibly challenging period, of the fact that accountants have a huge number of demands from their clients, so many regulation changes. They're thinking about being more digitized, or actually trying to be more competitive with their peers if they feel they need to, because there is so much work out there. So when you hear about those key themes which an accountant or bookkeeper need to look at within their practice, having a plan, what should they be focusing on first? Should it be thinking about how they can be more efficient, releasing that time? Should they be thinking about the income they're currently generating and maximizing what they've got? Or should they also be thinking about how they add more value to their client? And it could be managed information. It could be actually sharing reports on a more timely basis. It should be just actually being able to respond to a telephone call within 24 hours. What do you see in the main themes which accounting firms should focus on, or should it be all of the above?
It's like a huge question, that, Chris. Like, we could just
That's
do
right, I've only got 30
in
seconds.
So it's hard to say. I guess it's where is the biggest leak in your business right now? You mentioned something earlier about biggest time leak, right? And so people talk about time and they talk about money, but there's something else that people don't talk about, which is energy. And this is not a fluffy thing at all. This is very, very important. And I've been speaking to a lot of business owners recently, not just in the accounting sector, but especially in the accounting sector, but outside of it as well. And they're having some real staff challenges, like people who are just taking their energy up. I don't know what's happened since COVID, where people kind of questioning their careers or whatever, or people feeling a bit more entitled or whatever, I don't know. But just draining them. So they want to be able to invest time in doing all of these things, but they're being dragged down by a team member, or they're being dragged down by a really bad member of staff, by a really bad client or something like that. And you've got to free up your time and you've got to free up your energy. And sometimes you just need to cut those people out. I appreciate we've gone slightly off topic there, but that has been the same theme repeatedly with each firm that I've been dealing with. And so we've had to kind of free them up there. What I would say is, if there is an inefficiency problem, devote yourself to 1 week to solving it. So like, where's the biggest leakage of inefficiencies? Decide, let's all get together and let's just, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than what you've got it now. So seal those efficiency leaks up as fast as you can. Give yourself 5 days to do that. And then the next thing to my mind is you've got to be charging for everything. You've got to seal the leaks now in the money that's just dripping through your fingers. Why would you try to sell more services? Why on earth would you try and get more customers if you're not making the right amount of money for the work that you're already doing? So charge for everything that you do. And, you know, when we've done this time and time again, like I said, most firms are sat on 20 to 40% increased revenue growth. And I always use this as an analogy here, Chris. Everyone's looking for these diamond clients, these dream clients that turn up, that do everything that you want them to do, that will upload everything into AutoEntry exactly as you've asked them to, that will benefit from the advisory services and want all that, pay you, etc., and do all this stuff. They don't exist. Diamond clients do not exist. They need to be created, because diamonds look like that. They are rough lumps of rock in the ground with sharp edges, and you have got them already. You need to dig them out, polish them up, knock them into shape, and turn them into this. We need firms that create diamonds, not go and looking for diamonds. And, you know, 80 odd people, 200 people, whatever, have signed up for this webinar today, and you've turned up for it, and you'll have got something from this, whatever that may be. If you now do not take any action off the back of this, nothing's going to improve. Nothing is going to get any better for you. And so what's really key now here, Chris, is for people just to spend, after this webinar's finished, before you start looking in your emails, before you start doing anything else, just spend 10, 15 minutes of thinking, what is the one thing I am going to do off the back of this? Is it going to be to book a demo for AutoEntry or for Futrli or sign up for GoProposal? Is it that I'm going to call a staff meeting? Is it I'm going to buy this book? Is it I'm going to message a client? Whatever it is that you can do, you've got to take action. Taking notes will solve nothing. Nothing will improve by taking notes. You have to take action. And just on an absolute side note here, Chris, I don't know if this is relevant or even appropriate. When you look at the partners that you want to work with and you look at the software partners, it's easy to walk around an event or to look on a website and see something that's shiny and beautiful and glitzy and all this, whatever. Anyone can sell you anything. We could sell you our benefit, whatever. When you're looking to work with a software partner, this is going to be a long-term decision, a long-term relationship. Ask the questions, dig behind the companies, right? Find out what is the size of their support team. If something goes wrong on a Sunday night, how can we get hold of you? What is your security protocol? What's your roadmap for the future? What is the size of your team? Are you profitable? Are you a profitable business? That was one of the key decisions. We sold GoProposal to Sage because they're a £2 billion revenue company with £500 million profit. That stability there in that business was brilliant because it meant that we could have a predictable future for our product. And so it's really important that you find the partners that you want to work with that have that stability, that have that longevity. You want to find out about the people behind the business. Who's running this? How many accountants have you got in this business? Who's running the show? Like, ask these questions, because if you don't, you can make a flimsy decision about something that looks pretty and cute and nice, but you've not dug into what's really behind it and thought, is this the partner that I want to work with for the next 10 years?
Yeah, so as we're all being taught, we talk about anti-money laundering, know your client. Do you know your software providers, the partners you're working with? You do perform
100%.
the same level of due diligence as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you very much, Brian. And thank you, James, as ever, for your insights, experience, and just bringing all that intel and knowledge to us. So really, I think what we need to do is take a pause, reflect on what we've seen, learned, and heard over the last hour, and action one thing. It doesn't matter what it is, just action one thing. Once you've done that, you realize that wasn't so bad, and then do something else. But be that as part of a plan. So hopefully you'll have that QR code on your mobile phone. If not, we'll send a follow-up email plus a recording of this webinar so you can watch back to your delight, whether it's 1x speed or 2x speed if you're short of time. But please take some sort of action and have the confidence that no matter what your challenges are as an accountancy firm, Sage will have a solution, but more importantly, a human being to help you hold your hand, actually guide you into the future. So thank you all. Hope to see you all at some time at an event soon. But thank you all. Have a good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you. Goodbye.
Cheers, guys.